Hi, this video is on note-taking and writing tips. We refer to writing a lot of times in corrections as the 4 C's, or in this case, the 5 C's. A complete report that is concise. The meaning is clear throughout the report. We have correct grammar, punctuation, sentence structure. And courtesy is added that we present it in a very neutral stance. Note taking is where we begin. And you should always carry a notebook with you. So, anytime in criminal justice, you might have an incident where you're going to have to record the facts of what happened. So, carry one of those pocket sized notebooks with you at all time and a pen. Number the pages consecutively before you start the notebook. And then do not remove any of the pages from the notebook. This is for legal reasons to show that the evidence has not been tampered with. You will write down only facts and observations when you're taking notes. If you have an opinion, you could mark it opinion so that it's separated, but really what we're looking at is facts and observations. Cover the seven essential elements: who, what, where, when, why, how, action taken. Take your notes as soon as possible following the incident. The longer you wait, the less clear it becomes because you have other things going on during your day that literally cloud your mind. Include any verbal statements that participants or witnesses say, and if you quote them, make sure you use quotations so you know that the words are exactly correct. Otherwise, you're just paraphrasing what they say. If applicable, include some sketches of the scene and location of people and objects. This is common with traffic reconstruction or traffic accidents. It's also common with incident reports in corrections where you have a lot of people. Note all evidence that is collected and what happens to it. And this is referred to as the chain of evidence. So I collect a shank at a scene. I then note the time of that I picked it up and the location. I sign for it, and then I give it to my sergeant. And then my sergeant then follows procedure and to where it might go, like if you have an evidence room. Usually we bag evidence, and then the sergeant would sign it to who he's handing it over to. This chain of evidence is used to show that it has not been tampered with. Then in your notebook, you're going to record the events in chronological order. In other words, the order that they happen. And if you have time, to put the times that these incidents or actions occur. Sometimes they might be over time. Other times it's too quick, so it happens all, within a minute or so. When your notebook is full, keep it in a safe place, and then you open a new one and start at the top. Save these because you never know when they will be used to for evidence and to save you. So when you write, you want to use clear, familiar words. We want to use action verbs rather than passive verbs. We want to use last names to identify actors. And in corrections, a lot of times you put their inmate ID number as well, because if we have two Smiths fighting, the only way we can distinguish them is by their ID numbers. You want to keep your sentences short and simple and avoid a passive voice. And how we do that is be involved in it. As you're going to use first person perspective, the pronoun I saw rather than this officer observed. Notice the difference in language. Use proper grammar, spelling, and punctuation. and write the facts in the sequence they occurred. One of the things that you have to work on is describing behavior rather than an attitude that we might have. You don't want to characterize an attitude because you can't observe it, nor may you be qualified to make that assessment. For example, saying that he was crazy. Well, you're not a psychiatrist, so you can't really deem whether or not the behavior is crazy, but you can describe the behavior. So the example is when someone says the offender has a bad attitude, you have a question to ask, what does that mean to another person? What do you mean by bad attitude? So the report needs to describe the behavior, which paints the picture for the person that's not there of what this person was doing. In other words, you're allowing the reader to draw the same conclusions about the event that you have. So this is where it's really important to state facts and not opinion. So you may have an opinion about the officer's attitude, but that opinion has to be based on facts. So, example, a staff member reports that an offender became belligerent. Well, what does he or she base that opinion on? Well, did the officer take a step toward the staff, or did the offender take a step towards the staff member with clenched fists, state loudly that they weren't going to follow the officer's orders? Instead, instead of using the word belligerent, describe the actions. What did the person do? So here's a few examples. I find that if you can ask a question, you don't have the facts down. So the offended acted differently. Well, in what way? The offender threatened me. How? The staff member is not a team player. What makes them not a team player? This officer is excellent, outstanding, and a great officer. What did they do to be excellent? Staff failed to abide by policy. What did they do? Which policy? The staff member successfully completed the probationary period. How long was that? When did it start? Questions. The person gets along with officers and offender. What do you mean by gets along? Does that mean that they give them everything they want? The offender doesn't cause a lot of trouble. Does that mean they cause some trouble? What don't they do? So as you can see, with each one of these, you end up with another question. So those are why they're opinions. Put facts down. Here's some common mistakes in reports. And these are things that can either get misconducts thrown out or can get your court case thrown out. Missing or improperly stated names, missing or improperly stated places, missing dates and time. You forget to get a signature. You use jargon. Don't use criminal justice or prison slang. For example, in prisons, a lot of times the inmates call their cells their cribs. Well, you wouldn't write in a report, well, he was in his crib, because someone from the outside reading that might think you have a baby in the prison. You don't use acronyms. These are words formed by letters of a name. As well as abbreviations. Now, some abbreviations, that's all we know, like FBI. But many times, institutions develop their own acronyms of words that they write all the time. So, for example, because we had to write substance abuse a lot of time, we would write S/A. Now, to somebody that's not working in that, they might not have a clue what that means. Don't write any unsupported conclusions. I think that this person should go to prison. Well, they're not asking you for your opinion. Anything that's concluded should be based on fact and only when asked for. And don't be subjective. You have to make sure your report is very objective, very neutral, and just presents what occurred. Some things that you have to watch out for are misspelled words, improper grammar. So you might spell it right, but you use the wrong word. Um, Improper sentence structure. You have missing or improper punctuation marks. Um, you might have improper capitalization or missing capitalization, or you're writing it in an awkward style that the way that you write it, it's confusing to others. Here's some common misused words that I hear a lot. Advice versus advise. In fact, in the state police handbook, they have these wrong. Advice is a noun. That's something that you give to somebody. So please give me some advice. Advise is a verb. This is something you do, it's an action. Please advise me. So when you're giving the person their rights, you're advising them with an S of their rights. One of the hardest, I think, though, is affect and effect. They can be both, these words can be both nouns and verbs, and that's where it gets really confusing. As verbs, they differ. With an A, affect is something that has some influence on it. So you have to substitute in, if you're going to use it, was influence. Was this influence? Affect with an E is to cause it to happen. So that is the result of something happening. As nouns, they also differ. Affect is like affection. So it's related to emotion, like affective, you'll hear affective mood in psychology. Effect, again, is a result. So you have to be very careful in using these. Complement and complements are a little easier. The word complement with an E is related to complete. So we don't usually use this in a sentence, but a lot of times people mean the other one and spell it wrong. In other words, one thing complements another, and then the two are considered whole. Like Sally compliments John, and they make a great couple. The word compliment is an observation of good quality in a person. So if you want to give somebody a compliment, like saying, I complimented them on their clear writing style. Loose and lose are just spelling errors that people make. They're two different words. They look familiar, but they mean something different. The word loose means something that's not tight, like you have a loose screw. The word lose means that something went away or it became lost. So, did you lose all your marbles? There, and there, you should be able to tell that the first one is a possessive and it's used to describe something that belongs to a group. There, E-R-E, is a place further away from you. Go over there. And there with an apostrophe is a contraction for they are. So you have to know which one you're using. Unique is one of a kind. And a lot of times you hear people using this. If it's one of a kind, you can't keep having things that are unique. It really has to be unique and to the situation, like COVID-19 is a unique situation. One word that's not on here that is the Michigan word is using the word seen. I seen. It's really I saw. So you might talk like I seen this, but in writing it should be I saw this. So we want to use precise language. So here's a few examples. The officer was contacted at his home, but it's not direct. I phoned Officer Austin at his home, tells me I was involved in it, what I did, I used the phone, and who I contacted. Another one is I observed that there was a knife underneath the bunk. It's so much easier just to say, I saw a knife under the bunk. Well, I guess that's over. So, in other words, take the time to write properly, clearly and concisely, and take good notes.